Hello, this is Brian J. I'm talking about women's MMA right now. I'm in the middle of T-Mobile, about to back up my phone and upgrade my phone and upgrade my iPad. And I'm here right now talking about the Cris Cyborg Tonya Evinger fight. Now, for some reason, I have a weird feeling that this could be the only fight to happen at UFC 214. I think the Tyron Woodley Damian Maia fight might not happen because I think Damian Maia will be injured. He's taking this fight on a 1 month notice. He fought 2 months ago against Jorge Masvidal. It was a tough fight. It was a really tough fight. It was a close fight. I gave Damian Maia 2 rounds. I thought he won it because he was on Masvidal's back, landing more strikes, and he was close to submitting him multiple times over the span of 3 rounds. So I love Jorge Masvidal, but that's what you get for talking so much shit, saying that you bet Dana White any type of money. He bet Dana White and anybody any money for Dana White to find anybody at 170 to beat Masvidal, and Dana White found him. He found Damian Maia, one of the greatest jiu-jitsu artists of all time, one of the greatest grapplers, submission artists of all time, to beat Masvidal, and that was 2 months ago. So there you go. It went as expected. But I hope Masvidal fights Stephen Thompson. I got Masvidal beating Stephen Thompson. They fought in September, October, or at Madison Square Garden in November. That would be a great fight, and I think Masvidal would win because, you know, leg kicks don't really affect this guy, which he showed against Cerrone, and he's great with his hands. Masvidal is good boxing, great boxing actually. Even boxing fans like myself give Masvidal props for his boxing and his hands. So I think if he fought Stephen Thompson later on in the fall, I think he could knock Thompson out. I think he could. Even though Thompson has a great chin, I think Masvidal is fully capable of beating Stephen Thompson, but I hope Thompson wins because I'm a Stephen Thompson fan, even though he looked like shit in his last fight against Tyron Woodley. And Woodley didn't look good either, but Thompson looked a lot worse in my opinion. And Woodley did enough to win. So it is what it is. It was a terrible fight, and the UFC hasn't really had a good pay-per-view events until May, June, and July was okay. Wasn't as good as 212 or 211. Those are the best cards, but 213 was okay. It was certainly better than, you know, 208 and 209 and probably 210. But anyways, I think the Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier fight will not happen. I think Cormier will be injured by the end of this week or by next week. I think Jon Jones might test positive again because he's not focused and he doesn't care about the sport. He's an addict, you know, so we can't really trust those people too much. But if those 2 fights don't happen, if the Woodley Maia fight and the Jon Jones Daniel Cormier fight get canceled, I think the main event might end up being Cris Cyborg versus Tonya Evinger. A fight that happened out of nowhere because Germaine de Randamie is scared. In my opinion, she's scared because she thinks Cris Cyborg is on steroids, that she's juicing, she's taking something. So she didn't want to fight her. And in my opinion, Germaine de Randamie is the worst UFC champion of all time because she didn't defend her belt. She blatantly ducked Cris Cyborg, a division that was technically made for Cyborg. So Germaine got stripped. And so Cris Cyborg was going to fight Megan Anderson. Megan Anderson was calling out Cris Cyborg, but then Megan Anderson dropped out saying that she got personal issues. In my opinion, Megan Anderson knew that if she really got her ass beat by Cris Cyborg, it might ruin her career. You know, it might ruin her face, might ruin her career. And the UFC want Megan Anderson to be the star of the featherweight division. I don't think Cris Cyborg is going to be in the UFC for very much longer. If Cyborg beats Tonya Evinger and wins the UFC belt, I think she might defend it, maybe against Megan Anderson or against Holly Holm or against somebody. I think she might do one more fight, and then she's going to leave the UFC and go to Bellator. And that'll be that. She'll go to Bellator. I think that's going to be the more likely scenario. But Megan Anderson, yeah, she realized that Cris Cyborg wasn't screwing around, that she was going to fight her. She was getting ready to fight her. And people want to give excuses to Megan Anderson because, you know, she's cute, she's good looking, she has a beautiful body, she has a nice face. You know, she has the traditional look that UFC fans love, which is white people. White people with blonde hair or hazel eyes, green eyes. We know what it is. We know what it is. I'm not saying Dana White is racist because he's not. In my opinion, he's not. But the UFC caters to the predominantly white audience of America. And what sells in the UFC is blonde hair, blue eyes. One of the few black fighters to become a huge draw in the UFC was Rashad Evans, and then it was Jon Jones. And nowadays it's also Daniel Cormier, but really Jon Jones. And, you know, Dana White, you know, for me, he proved that he's not a racist. So I don't really get those accusations. Dana White bent over backwards to save Jon Jones' career multiple times. He gave him multiple chances. And Jon Jones is still screwing up. He might screw up again later on this week. He might screw up next week during fight week. Like next Wednesday. He might screw up next Thursday, next Friday. Hell, even if he wins the title again by beating Daniel Cormier, submitting him or knocking him out or winning a decision, Jon Jones might still screw up. He might still test positive for cocaine. Might still have a hit and run. Might still have a DUI or get into a bar fight and get stripped of the title again. And then that will be that. We'll never know. We don't know what's going to happen with Jon Jones. But Dana White has bent over backwards for Jon Jones. He has tried to save his career multiple times. So Dana White's not a racist. But I will admit that the UFC does cater to white people. And for good reason. That's the majority of their audience. I mean, they have Latino fans. They have a lot of black fans. They have a lot of Brazilian fans, especially in Brazil. But what sells in America is blonde hair, blue eye. I mean, how do you explain Holly Holm beating Betch Correa, and she goes from rank number 6 or 7 up to rank number 2? Like, the top 5 in the bantamweight division is all screwed up. Valentina should be number 1. She's earned it. She beat Juliana Pena. But Juliana Pena should be number 3. No, Raquel Pennington should be number 3. Juliana Pena should be number 4. Holly Holm should be number 5. And Kat Zingano should be number 6. No, Sarah McMahon should be number 5. Holly Holm should be number 6. And Kat Zingano should be number 7. And then you could put Liz Carmouche number 8 or number 9. I don't know where you put Alexis Davis, but you know, the top 5 is weird. Like, Holly Holm gets one big victory in Singapore against Betch Correa, who's one of the worst MMA fighters ever. And you put Holly Holm at number 2? Seriously? So the winner of Nunes-Valentina is going to fight Holly Holm again, basically. That's basically it. Especially if Valentina wins. I would prefer to see Valentina fight Sarah McMahon or Kat Zingano. That's what I prefer to see. Because Valentina's never fought those two, and Sarah McMahon is a big woman, and she could just sit on her and out-wrestle her and get a submission. Valentina's a great fighter, but let's face it, bantamweight is too big for her. Bantamweight is too big. Sarah McMahon is a big woman. Kat Zingano is a big woman, and she's a devastating striker, but Kat hasn't won a fight since she beat Nunes 3 years ago, so we'll have to see what happens. But anyways, I think Cris Cyborg versus Tonya Evinger might be the only fight that's scheduled to happen. That might actually happen. At least I hope it happens. And I'm proud of Tonya Evinger for stepping up to fight Cris Cyborg because she's earned it. She's earned it. You know, she stepped up to the plate. She's the bantamweight champion in Invicta. Tonya Evinger's been fighting for years. I've seen a few of her fights. I've seen actually quite a lot of her fights. So I'm very happy for her. I'm proud of her. And she's fighting Cris Cyborg. And I think Cris Cyborg is going to knock her out in about 2 or 3 minutes, maybe less. You know, Tonya Evinger, you know, but she's prepared. I think she's really mentally prepared to be a part of the Wall of Destruction. Somebody put online the Wall of Destruction from Cris Cyborg, where she just destroys women. It's just some pictures and posters of women that Cris Cyborg has destroyed. It's called the Wall of Destruction. And I think Tonya Evinger is going to be on that wall. And Tonya Evinger is in a win-win situation. She gets her ass beat. She got her ass beat by arguably the second or third greatest women's MMA fighter of all time. I still say the greatest women's MMA fighter of all time is Joanna. And then Cyborg. And then third might be Nunes. Or, you know, as of right now, I guess who's active. Because Ronda Rousey isn't active. I mean, Ronda Rousey, you would probably have to put in the top 3 or top 5 because of how dominant she was. But she wasn't a complete fighter. Joanna's a complete fighter. Cyborg is a complete fighter. Amanda Nunes is a complete fighter, and so is Valentina Shevchenko. So those are really the best fighters. But Tonya Evinger, if she manages to submit Cris Cyborg or gets a decision, survives, like, wow, be the biggest upset of 2017 because nobody knows Tonya Evinger except for me because I watched some of her Invicta fights. But a lot of other people know who she is. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Cris Cyborg becoming the UFC champion. And I think she's going to leave the UFC and go to Bellator or go back to Invicta. And I think Megan Anderson is just going to come to the UFC and win the UFC title and become the face of the UFC. You know, I mean, she's another white woman. And she's cute, but that's what the UFC wants and that's what they're going to show. That's just a reality. I'm not accusing Dana White of being a racist because he's not. He's bent over backwards for Jon Jones. I mean, Dana White's put himself on the line for Jon Jones. You know, so that says a lot about his character. Dana White, he might contradict himself and lie. Of course, he's a promoter. Promoters lie. I'm a huge boxing fan. I love men's boxing. I love boxing. I mean, promoters lie all the time and contradict themselves all the time. From Don King, Bob Arum, Floyd Mayweather, Lou DiBella, everybody. Everybody. Dan Goossen, rest in peace, R.I.P. Dan Goossen's gone, but he used to contradict himself too. But Dana White contradicts himself all the time. But he went above and beyond for Jon Jones. And Jon Jones is the only superstar that the UFC has this year. Conor McGregor's fighting Mayweather. Ronda Rousey is out of commission. You know, she's MIA. So what does the UFC have? Nobody. Really nobody. So this is all they have is Jon Jones. So hopefully Jon Jones, he stays clean, he stays good, and shows up next Saturday, July 29th. If all these fighters make weight and all these fights are about to happen and no fights are canceled on the day of, I'm actually going to have to go to MMA and NYC to watch these fights and skip the Mikey Garcia-Adrian Broner fight. A fight that I want to see because I want to see Mikey Garcia beat Adrian Broner. But I'm not going to be able to see it because I'm going to be watching the UFC that night. So, oh well. It's a lot to think about, a lot to ponder. I'm in T-Mobile right now. I'm about to upgrade my phone. This is Brian J, and my hair's messed up. As you can see, I look like young Frankenstein. Mel Brooks. I look like Mel Brooks from Young Frankenstein. Probably worse, because Mel Brooks had style. Not Mel Brooks. There's that guy from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Love that actor. I think he died. I think he passed away too. I forgot his name. I'll say his name on my next video because I'll definitely know. But I'll talk to y'all later. I'm Brian J, and it's signing off. I'm here to talk about women's MMA and maybe a couple other topics as well. Talk to you later. Bye.